Hey all, it's Dominique. Welcome to my world, where we're going to talk narcissism. I know, fun topic, right? But stay with me. I know we talk about this topic a lot. That's because it is pretty much an epidemic situation in this world at this time. And because it isn't just a name, just a title, just a colloquial insult to throw at somebody we don't like, and it's something important for us to be able to distinguish, I think that is a good reason for us to be able to talk about this a little bit more on a regular basis. And let's talk today about how we might identify somebody who is a narcissist. Now, I think it's really important to preface this information with the following sort of public announcement, if you will. Okay, it's important while knowing that somebody is a narcissist, in your opinion, and by the definition of the DSM, which is the Diagnostic and Statistical Manual, 5th edition, while knowing that by that definition, the person you're interacting with is a narcissist, it's important for us, whether we have degrees in psychology or not, it's important for us not to diagnose, because even if we're doctors of psychology, doctors of psychiatry, MDs, we can't and shouldn't ever try to ethically diagnose somebody who hasn't come to us to be diagnosed privately. And if that person had come to us, we would be violating HIPAA by saying, hey, this guy's a narcissist, steer clear, to people other than our client or our patient, right? And if that person hasn't come to us, still it's unethical to come through with a solid diagnosis and say, I diagnosed this person, because they haven't come to us and because they haven't okayed that with us. So it's really important not to diagnose. So while you can say with confidence, for instance, hey, this elected official who's very high up in a certain country's government is a narcissist, you're saying that as a layperson, no matter what field you're in. You're saying, my opinion is that so-and-so is a narcissist. My feeling is that, that so-and-so is a narcissist, and here's why I think that. And of course, it's not a good idea to go around spreading rumors about people, but if you're trying to assist other people in making sure that they can avoid the kind of abuse you've been through, then I think it can be appropriate to discuss. And certainly if there is, for instance, in your office, let's say there's a person who everybody pretty much, the cat's out of the bag, everyone knows they're a narcissist, everyone knows they're a problem personality, that's a different situation. Everybody's kind of trying to work together to make sure that everyone works well together at the office. And everyone kind of knows that so-and-so is perhaps on the NPD spectrum, right? And so that helps us all to work with so-and-so. But it's really important not to engage in any kind of smear campaign and any kind of targeting, because then we're just as bad as the narcissist himself or herself, right? So that is really, really important to keep in mind before we go forward. Now that we've discussed that, and now that we are picking up naughty kitties and moving them apart from one another so that you guys don't hear cat fights throughout the whole episode, I know, hashtag super professional. Welcome to my world, right? Literally, welcome to my world. But now that we've discussed that, I feel like we can now move on to the point where we discuss, how for our opinion and our peace of mind, do we tell if somebody is a narcissist, does struggle with NPD? Okay, and so let's get into that without further ado. So, as we've talked about before, there are two really easy ways to tell. There are two really simple means of telling, of deciphering and determining whether or not somebody falls along the NPD spectrum, or perhaps even the spectrum of sociopathy, psychopathy. And they're kind of little hacks, if you will. So I'll give you those right now. The first one is really simple, guys. This is very covert, very easy to determine, very simple. If you yawn in front of that person, I'm yawning right now because I said the word yawn. So obviously I am not on the narcissistic personality disorder spectrum. I'm not on the cluster B spectrum, but okay, I'm psyching myself out right now. I'm yawning all over the place. But if you yawn in front of somebody, and perhaps you do it a couple of times, or a couple of people in the room yawn, you yawn, someone else yawns, it's an empathetic response. It's a built-in empathetic response. It's like an actual reflex. Like when the doctor does the reflex test and, taps your knee or your elbow and you have that reflexive movement, that's what yawning is. You have an empathetic reflex to yawn. Now, if the person in front of you doesn't yawn, but everyone else across the room is yawning, that is very strange. To me, that means there's something either wrong with their vision and they didn't see you yawn. Their hearing, maybe they weren't looking at you and didn't hear you yawn. Or their empathy, their empathetic reflexes. So, do the yawn test. First and foremost, it's pretty much a no-brainer. It's easy to do, and it's something where there aren't a lot of variables there. Yeah, that person could have visual impairments or auditory issues, but you probably know them well enough to know if that is or is not the case. And so you can easily discard those variables. And it's really an experiment that's very easily duplicated. It's very easily duplicated. Anybody can do it. Anybody can get decent results. And correct results. Correct results, decent results, easily duplicated. So do the yawn test. If, they just don't yawn back once, it could be a fluke. Do it a couple of times. Now, don't sit there yawning up a storm and looking like a complete weirdo, because that could clue them into the fact that there is something going on. Maybe they don't know exactly what, but, you might even kind of look like the weirdo if you go ahead on a yawn rampage and just start yawning all over the place and making yourself look like you're having some sort of a medical problem or something. Be subtle, be sparing, obviously. I think most people probably know that, but it still bears repeating. It bears being said, I think. And the next test is something that's a little bit more... It requires more personal interaction. It's more social, and it's something where you're going to need the input of the narcissist or suspected narcissist. You're going to need that person's input for this next one. So this next sort of foolproof test is asking the person a simple question. Okay? And that question is this. It's very simple, but make sure that you're discussing this issue in the appropriate situation and that you're not walking up to your boss at a meeting and asking them this. But use your best judgment, essentially. Use your best judgment when you approach somebody and ask this question. And here's the question. How do you feel that you could improve yourself? as a person. Like we can all improve ourselves. We can all look forward to building a better life for ourselves, but not just that. We can all improve ourselves as people. Perhaps we could work on our interpersonal skills, our communication skills, our listening skills, right? Perhaps we could work on just active listening, not interrupting. Perhaps we could stop saying or like in our sentences. And of course, sometimes that's just a part of colloquial talk, right? It's part of colloquial dialogue. But we can all work on something, is the point here. And a narcissist will not have an answer to that question. And in fact, they'll have the old job interview answer to that question, which is, well, boss, my biggest failing is that I'm a perfectionist. And so you're not actually expressing a failing. You're not actually expressing a weakness. You're not expressing anything that you could change. You're basically using that question as sort of a springboard for self-aggrandizement, right? So a narcissist or a sociopath, but likely a narcissist, would say something like, well, I already have the highest score in the entire world for chess, but I did lose a game to Bobby Fischer back in the 90s, and I'd like to replay that game and do it more perfectly. It would be something along those lines. It would be something like, let's say that you're talking to a narcissist at work. How do you think, Bob, that you could improve yourself as a person? How could you grow and change as a person moving in a positive direction? Well, Bob, the narcissist, might say something like, well, I've had the best sales record here for 10 years straight, but I could up my numbers even more, but I think everybody else would just be too jealous of me. That's a characteristic narcissistic response too. The humble brag is another characteristic response. And again, if you're the boss asking an employee something, you should expect a humble brag or a kind of a professional answer, right? If you're not, you may actually be getting to the root of a problem. You may be getting to the root of the fact that this person is struggling with narcissism if you ask them this question. But again, if you're in a position of power over the person you're asking, they're not going to answer the same way. The power dynamics at play are going to change the situation, and this question might not be as foolproof as it otherwise would be. Keeping that in mind, if you choose to use this as sort of a litmus test, would be a good idea. Okay, so if you are somebody who's the one in power, perhaps you're the boss at the company that you own, you're the COO, the CEO, the CFO, something like that. You're one of the big bosses at that company, and you want to see if this problem employee perhaps is a narcissist, then that probably wouldn't be the best way to do it. Do the yawn test, watch their interactions, talk to them, see what they act like and what kinds of things they say, and if they're very self-referential, see if they're kind of dramatic. These are better ways to tell if you're the boss or the head hunch over the person in charge wherever you're at. But if you're not, then it's really a good idea to use this question as a litmus test to determine whether this person might be struggling with narcissistic personality disorder. And I think it's really good to know, look, if you're working with somebody or you have somebody in your personal life that you think might be suffering from narcissism. In fact, I always tell my clients that it's us who are suffering with and struggling with narcissism when someone else has it. It's us that are suffering. It's us that are struggling. It's those around the person that suffer from it. But if you feel that someone in your life may have narcissism, use these techniques. See where they lead you. Some other ways to tell, aside from the top two foolproof ways, the sneeze test and the how could you improve yourself as a person, how could you grow as a person question, would be to make a note of how they act or acted, assuming that this is now in the past, when you first met, versus how they act or acted as time progressed, as time marched on. Did the person that you first met sort of disappear into the ether, only to be replaced by somebody who's a bit on the grumpy side, a bit on the bitchy side, a bit self-possessed, maybe even self-obsessed? If so, you may be dealing with a narcissist, but it's not the only thing you might be dealing with. You could be dealing with somebody with depression, with bipolar disorder. You could be dealing with somebody with some of the other cluster B personality disorders like histrionic personality disorder and borderline personality disorder. So don't assume right away that because their behavior changed a bit, it's definitely narcissism. Even people who are children of narcissists often tend to follow a certain behavioral pattern. And it can almost seem as if they're narcissistic, but then other things, other clues about them will lead you to be able to tell whether they themselves suffer from NPD, right? So the next tip that I would give you would be, like I said, to watch for any behavioral 180s, sort of. See if that behavior that you experienced when you first met totally shifted and changed, and now you're dealing with a totally different person. Perhaps this person, I like to say within the first 6 weeks or so of having met and hit it off with a narcissist or a sociopath, I like to say that within those first 6 weeks or so, you get the honeymoon period. It doesn't matter whether you're working with them, whether you're friends, whether they're a family member, whether it's a romantic partner, you're going to get that honeymoon period. And after that, it either is going to taper off or it's just going to be an extreme drop off, boom, falling off a cliff, like going down a roller coaster. What the hell happened and where is my stomach, right? What happened and where is my stomach? Holy shit, where did I just end up? I know where we started. I don't know where I'm at right now. And it is sort of a jarring experience no matter how it progresses. It is a very upsetting, very jarring experience. You might be left wondering, well, what did I do? What did I say? I must have effed up somehow. I must have done something or said something to turn this person off of me. Or if you have a poor internal dialogue and internal narrative yourself, you may actually be saying something like, well, this person clearly saw who I was on the inside and bolted. No, it's not about you. It's not about you. It is about them. I'm not saying there aren't lessons you could learn and how to improve yourself. We can all learn lessons. And I think if we're honest with ourselves, we recognize that as truth. But, it's not you. No matter what lessons you could learn, what changes you could make, etc., so on and so forth, it's not you. That's what you need to keep in mind. Okay? So they may be very pleasant with you up front, and then all of a sudden just fall off the face of the planet, ignore your texts, block you from their phone, ignore your request to talk to them at work about a project you're working on. They may even, if you're in a situation like that, they may even take on the project themselves, do it all themselves, and act like they've been put upon and they're a martyr and what have you. Oh, poor me, I was left to do the project alone, boss, but I still pulled through, and look how well I did. You should promote me, when the whole time you had done your part, you were trying to get with them, and they simply wouldn't pick up the phone, wouldn't answer the email, right? So they paint a very different picture in their minds and with other people of their behavior and your behavior than reality might agree with, than shared reality might be. The important thing to recognize is that narcissists and sociopaths, but narcissists for sure, do not recognize the same shared reality that you and I recognize, right? They don't recognize that the sky is up and the ground is down. They don't recognize this. If they want to argue that the ground is up and the sky is down, they will do that, and they won't take no for an answer. Sure, they're dead wrong, but they might convince a few other people to join their flat earth club, right? They might convince a few other people to join them, and at that point, this becomes a shared delusion, and that is a really dangerous thing. And unfortunately, that is how insidious, office culture, when there's a narcissist involved, can be. Family culture, friend group culture, it can all change because of one bad apple. It can all change because of one bad apple. And the unfortunate thing is that you, the person who, it's not just going to be you, there will be other people too, but the narcissist will kind of keep you from communicating with each other. But you, as one of the people that is seeing the truth of what's going on, your voices are going to be shut out. Your voices are going to be shut out completely. And you're going to be led to question your own reality, to question anything that you perceive, anything that you think. You're going to be led to question your reality, and you're going to, again, be discouraged from talking with other people who may also notice the same things you notice. And this group delusion can really spin out of control. I have physically witnessed this. I've seen this happen with clients and friends who have been through narcissistic abuse, where some really awful thing happened at the hands of the narcissist. Perhaps a physical assault, perhaps gang stalking, perhaps actual stalking, harassment of some sort. This thing happens, the narcissist's group of followers and flying monkeys witness it, and the narcissist has them so snowed that their memories shift and change to believe what the narcissist believes and to reflect their beliefs and what they want everyone to think. So, like in my experience, one time I saw this narcissistic sociopath that I had to endure for some time assault two people in front of me. Now, there were other folks around who witnessed this. I was certainly not the only person. There were probably 5 or 6 people who witnessed this. As time went by, well, first off, the excuses started. Oh, well, the person had been drinking. Oh, okay, so I guess that makes attacking people okay because you've been drinking, because that's a super responsible thing to do in and of itself. Drink to the point that you supposedly black out and start attacking people? Check. Super healthy. Let's get on that, right? Well, so essentially the original excuse was that the person drank too much and was in an altered state of mind. Not really an excuse. Maybe it's a reason, it's not an excuse. It doesn't excuse the behavior. And then later on, the same people that witnessed the same two assaults that I saw with my own eyes, started to say, well, I don't know. I don't know if that's what happened. Maybe the hit wasn't that hard. Maybe it was a pat on the back. It's like a backhand to someone's face has turned into a pat on the back. What? Excuse me? So this is the sort of group dynamic that can evolve or devolve, if you want to put it that way, around a narcissist. And it's really, really sick. Yes, there is such a thing as group delusions. Yes, there is such a thing as brainwashing. And it's not, you are getting sleepy, dangling a stopwatch or pocket watch in front of somebody's eyes. It's not that cut and dried. It's a combination of negative trauma bonding and positive support when the narcissist notices that other people are accepting their delusion, negative interference when people are not accepting the delusion to the point the narcissist wants. So perhaps that person gets the cold shoulder for a while, shut out of the group for a while, shut out of the in crowd for a while, what have you. And then when they do start, quote unquote, coming around, as some narcissists would call it, then the group dynamic is slowly opened back up to that person. And here is why, if you are that person, you don't want to go directly to the group of people surrounding the narcissist, the support personalities, and say, hey, I saw this awful thing that happened. It's because it's going to be like the allegory of the cave. Everybody is living in this dark cave. They're afraid of what's outside. They don't know what's outside. But one day, one of the people in the cave steps out into the light and sees the light. They realize that there's this whole other sense that they have, vision. They can see things because of this light. This light has opened up a whole new world to them. And the light isn't hurting anything. It's a good thing. Let's go out in the light, guys. So that person who sees the light will come back into the cave, try to tell people about the light, and will be pretty much ostracized and told, cool, you're a crazy person, get the hell out of here. Or, cool, you're a crazy person, so why don't you shut the hell up and sit down, and we'll pretend that this never happened because you're embarrassing us right now. When in reality, this person really honestly is trying to share this beautiful situation with people that they care about, and they're trying to help them to escape from that abuse. It's not going to be received that way. The best thing you can do is be a little bit more passive and measured in your responses with people surrounding the narcissist. For instance, if you do notice that this person is a narcissist, going up and saying, hey, Julie, Bob is a raging narcopath. He's a narcissistic sociopath, and he doesn't belong here. That's not going to work. Rather than doing that, when Julie comes to you and tells you some amazing thing Bob did for the company when you know Bob didn't do it at all, you might say, well, that's very nice of Bob to do. It's interesting that you say that Bob did that when I saw in the company email that Cheryl actually did that. I wonder if maybe the director is mistaken and somehow has gotten the wrong information. Well, anyway, whoever did that, that was very nice of them to do. So while it may sound passive, you're planting that seed of doubt in Julie's mind that Bob did this awesome thing he claimed to do that you know for a fact he didn't do. So things like that. For instance, if you know somebody who's in an abusive relationship with a narcissist and you've done these tests and you feel like you are pretty confident that they are on the NPD spectrum, you might say something along the lines of, I noticed, that you weren't able to come out to girls' night the other night. Is everything okay? And your friend might say, well, my husband didn't want me to go out. He got upset, yada, yada. And you might say something like, well, I'm sure that since he is a supportive and loving person, and he cares about you and cares about your well-being, that we will be able to look forward to seeing you at the next girls' night. And, I'm sure that this won't happen again. I'm sure that he loves and cares for you enough that he wants you to go out and live your own life, essentially. So this is much more effective than saying, that asshole, he is so abusive, you better leave him. Because that's challenging the person's worldview directly. And that's not something you can do when the person's been brainwashed. Whether it's group brainwashing, individual brainwashing, what have you, you can't do that. That's not going to work. That will backfire, and it will get you ostracized from the rest of the group. Not very helpful, huh? What can you do from the outside? Probably not very much. Not very much. Now, I'm not suggesting that you should stay in a close relationship with a narcissist, but if you have one at work or in, a particular professional situation of some sort, maybe on a board that you volunteer with, something like that, it's important to kind of keep that narcissist in your pocket in a way, kind of keep them around, but keep your boundaries up really high. Don't share personal stuff with them. Just keep that wall up and make sure that you're able to get along with them while still sort of calling out their shenanigans in the most appropriate way possible, in the most non-confrontational way possible. Now, I have seen situations where, at a group dynamic of some sort, in a work situation, literally everybody but the narcissist can't stand the narcissist, knows they're a narcissist, and simply wants to, call them out when they act up and leave them alone when they're not being too much of a threat. In a situation like that, you don't have to be quite as graceful and careful, because pretty much everybody knows that so-and-so is the narcissist and that they're toxic. And, in a situation like that, when Bob, the narcissist, starts acting up at a meeting or something, you can kind of say, okay, Bob, I understand that you're emotional right now. This time is being paid for by the company. We really need to focus on the business at hand. No more wasting time, basically. Whereas in a dynamic where that narcissist is beloved, you might say, well, that's a very interesting thing that you just said, Bob, and that's something that we might discuss later on. What do you think we should do about the quarterly reports, though? You got to be a little bit more passive when that person's beloved, or when not everybody realizes they're toxic. You cannot just come out and say, hey, they're toxic, because then you'll be viewed as that boy who cried wolf, or you'll be treated like the protagonist is in the allegory of the cave that I just mentioned to you. Another way to really know whether this person is for sure a narcissist is to look at who they surround themselves with, and to listen to their speech too. Listen to their speech. Are they very self-referential? Do their relationships tend to evolve quickly, and you go from not really knowing each other to being BFFs and then hating each other? If that's the sort of relationship cycle that they engage in with people on a regular basis, then yes, it's very likely that you're dealing with a narcissist. Very likely. Do they have outbursts during meetings, during, group events where it's not appropriate to have an outburst? Then you're probably dealing with a narcissist. Or potentially a sociopath. But again, it's important to keep in mind that not all narcissists are going to be that overt. There is such a thing as that covert narcissist, and using these telltale signs and the two tests that I told you about earlier will determine whether the person is a narcissist, whether they're overt or covert. They're foolproof, absolutely foolproof. So yeah, look at their relationships. Look at how they cycle through their relationships, right? Many people think that narcissists are all about physical appearance. That's not always so. What I would say is if somebody has a very odd appearance, a very striking appearance, whether it's attractive or relatively unattractive, somewhat objectively speaking, of course, I'm not talking if they wear a designer you don't like or wear a makeup line that you don't like, but if their appearance is a bit on the bizarre side, I'm not saying quirky or they have their own style, I'm talking a little bizarre, then, perhaps they have to wear a certain color all the time. Perhaps they have to wear a certain, something really goofy, like a purple suit to work, or a juicy couture sweatsuit or some goofy thing like that normally people really wouldn't wear and would kind of know that they maybe don't look their best in. That is a narcissist. And oftentimes that odd appearance can be a telltale sign of sociopathy too. And we'll do a show on that later on, not right now. because there are some slight differences in how to tell if somebody is a narcissist versus how to tell if somebody is a sociopath, right? Now, do they have a grandiose air about them? Do they seem to sort of suffer from delusions of grandeur? Do they think do they have a persecution complex? Is everybody out to get them? Do they think that all the villagers have their, pitchforks and are coming to their house to burn their house down every day, no matter what the problem is? Then that person may well be a narcissist. They will exaggerate things that they have accomplished, or try to make it look like they've accomplished things that they really, looking back, you're really struggling to see how they even had anything to do with that. Perhaps, I know an individual, I'm not even going to go there with sex or gender. I know an individual in life, really specific, Dominique, right? But I know an individual in life who believes that they have helped a very wealthy and well-known entrepreneur to start a space agency. I mean, it's laughable. It's laughable. But if you ask this person, they will manufacture a story and try to convince you that they're best friends with this person and that they are their right-hand person and they're right in the thick of it, developing all of these disrupting strategies in business, and they don't even know the guy, right? They don't even know the guy. They've probably never talked, never met, nothing, right? So this is really a characteristic sign of a narcissist. Sometimes it's more a sign of the grandiose, overt narcissist. Other times it can be a sign of the more covert or philanthropic narcissist, right? That narcissist who goes to church and is on all of the boards for those wonderful, needy children. And, that kind of a narcissist might exaggerate their importance within the church, or might exaggerate their importance within that spiritual community that you're all in, or, on that board that you're all on. Perhaps they're saying that Hillary Clinton herself appointed them to this board and said, oh, Susan, you really should be on this board for poor, defenseless children because you are the most competent and empathetic human I have ever met. And I want to nominate you, Susan, for the Nobel Peace Prize next year. I mean, this is the kind of stuff that these people manufacture. Now, look, I am somebody who has lived an incredibly full life. I have lots of outrageous stories to tell you, but they're true, and you can vet them, right? Like when I was run off the road by the cop. You can vet that. You could probably look back in records and find out that happened. Perhaps you drove by and saw me being run off the road that day. If I told you the story about the billionaire who needed a ride to her house when I was stuck in Pittsburgh, the billionaire philanthropist that was cut off from her car because of the Pittsburgh Marathon when I was in Pittsburgh, and who I gave a ride to her house up on Mount Washington. Like, you could vet that story. You could probably, get in contact with her and ask her, and she would say, oh, yeah, Dominique, angel lady. It's, a personal aside that we shared, and you could prove that thing happened. So I'm not saying that anybody with big stories to tell who's lived a full life, is telling you fibs and is a narcissist. Just keep that in mind, because I've had clients come to me and go, oh, well, this person I've been dating claims to have worked with Barack Obama, and I'm like, okay, are they from Chicago? Oh yeah, and they're in the community organizing business? Yeah. Okay. And were they around pre-2008? Oh, they were. Okay. Well, it's very likely that they did work with Barack Obama, right? So it's good to be able to have those skills to discern, is this a fantastical, absurd, ridiculous story that didn't happen, or is this something kind of kooky, but it really happened, or something that's interesting or neat, but it really happened? For instance, if I told you that I met Bernie Sanders, you might say, where? If I were a narcissist, I go, well, just out and about and on the street, and well, he just thought that I looked awesome, and he came up to me and told me that I was awesome. Whereas me, as a non-narcissist, would say, well, my dad and I paid to go to a dinner and drinks event with Bernie at Tommy Nevin's pub in Chicago. And we met him very briefly, right? You can see the difference between those two stories. So I do think that's really important to remember. And please forgive me if it seems like I went off on a tangent, but I just think that's a really important point to keep in mind. Don't go around thinking everyone and their brother is a narcissist. About 1 in every 20 to 25 people, sometimes more, sometimes less, end up being narcissists. But if you have a gathering of 50 people, that means 2, 3, maybe even 4 or 5 people there are possibly on that spectrum. So you can see how much damage these people do, and you can see that they're still prevalent in society. There's no shortage of narcissists. There's no shortage of cluster Bs. There just isn't. And in fact, I don't think there ever will be. I think that in a weird way, they're sort of a necessary part of the social dynamic and the social structure. Now, we discussed, listening for BS stories and kooky success stories and that sort of thing. It's really interesting to me, though. Here's another point, and I think some people might disagree with me on this, so please use your own judgment. In my experience, I feel that this is true. While narcissists, whether they be overt or covert, malignant, or sort of, I don't want to say benign, but there are narcissists that are less and more malignant than others, right? They're humans. They fall on a spectrum. They're not, Cylons. They're not carbon copies of each other. For instance, a narcissist isn't a number 8, whereas a sociopath is a number 3, and the rest of the Cylon models are just fine. No, it's much more complicated than that, much more nuanced than that. And not every narcissist or sociopath is the same. So again, keeping that in mind, the ins and outs of narcissism could fill more than a volume of books. And I'm just trying to give them to you straight in measured doses here so that you can have a little bit of an extra chance at success. But for a narcissist who is inherently referential, that's not even a word, referential, they're very self-referential. They'll say things like, well, this was accomplished and I played a critical role. They won't often, however, say, I'm great. They may say, I did this. I played a critical role in this. They won't outright say, I'm better than everyone, right? So it's really odd for someone so grandiose, but it's very true. They aren't going to come out and make statements about themselves. For instance, our president right now, sorry folks, we're going to be real, okay? We're not going to BS. Our president right now, who more than likely falls along the lines of narcissism and sociopathy. He's kind of on that fence between the two. Will say things like, well, 10 million people came to my inauguration and they think I'm the best. Well, he's trying to say, I'm the best, you should think I'm the best, but he's doing it in a weirdly passive-aggressive way. It's not, hey, you know what? Whereas somebody like myself, for instance, somebody like you probably, somebody like, I don't know, our last president, President Obama, might say, well, yeah, I think I am the best choice, and here's why. And I think that we've got some other really great candidates, but I do. I think I'm the best choice, and well, that's why I'm running. And here's why I think that. And then back it up with facts. Somebody like our current president might say, well, 50 million people came to my inauguration and they think I'm the best. Well, I mean, they think it, but they think it. And they'll kind of pound that they think it thing in. He might even go so far as to do that comical, goofy thing that I just did, that over-exaggeration, where they continue to repeat a phrase until it is drilled into your mind. And actually, that can be a decent professional strategy if you are an entrepreneur. But you have to follow it up with appropriate action and appropriate facts and citation of appropriate facts. We can't just make up facts. We can't just cite things and then expect people to believe them without us backing them up, right? But a narcissist will, and it will never be, I'm so great, and here's why. It will be, well, 50 million people think I'm great, and so everyone thinks I'm great. This other leader in some other country in the world just told me that I'm really great and that I just ended poverty. And it's like, no, they probably didn't. And you probably felt the need to make that up. But why did you feel the need to make that up, right? Whereas a sociopathic leader might say, well, I'm the greatest, and if you dare question me, I will crush you. So do you see the difference? Hey, everybody, you should think I'm great because this guy thinks I'm great, versus I'm great and I'm perfect. Don't question why. If you do, I'll crush you. Okay? That, in a nutshell, is the difference between narcissism and sociopathy. Okay. Another obvious test is to see if you can get them to muster up some semblance of empathy for another human being. For instance, you're trying to feel someone out at the office. See if they're a narcissist. You might mention that, well, Laura over in accounting just broke her arm. And isn't that unfortunate? I can't imagine how that would feel. That's got to be so painful. And the narcissist will say something along the lines of, yeah, that sucks. Huh. No empathy, though. It won't be, ooh. You won't see that wince face, that oof. Like they're imagining the pain and, ooh, how I feel for her. God, that must hurt. You're not going to see the empathy face. It's going to be, oh, that sucks. Anyway. Okay. And if you do keep on discussing the issue, they might muster up some false, bullshit answer for you. Like, well, yeah, I guess that's really too bad. Maybe you guys should, get her a gift certificate or something. Anyway, it's never going to be empathetic. They might muster up, a ghost of empathy that, isn't quite empathy, but kind of seems like empathy, but you're never going to see that wince face, that, ooh, ow, I'm imagining the pain I feel for her, that's got to hurt so much, what does she need, what can I do for her, type of thing. And it's going to be very apparent. Okay. Now, these are the very best ways that I can think to tell you how to identify a narcissist. And it's really important. There are so many people out there, folks, who would say, oh, labels don't matter. Let's just do away with labels. Au contraire. Labels matter immensely. Labels matter. I'm not talking about labels like, is that child playing with a girl toy or a boy toy, like gendered silliness or, Is that multiracial person black or white, or are they a Native American? No. What I'm talking about is, is this person a pathological person? Is this person fundamentally unwell on a deep spiritual level? Is there something wrong at the core of this person's being? Okay, that is very different, my friends, than simply labeling somebody to put them in a box. That is for your safety. That is for your well-being. That is for your protection. And, it's for other people's protection too. Please keep that in mind. Labels matter in this case, not in every case. I certainly don't need to know what somebody's gender is. I don't need somebody to self-define so I can put them into a box, right? I don't need to know what kind of music you're playing with your band. Is it indie or is it jazz? Damn it. I don't need to know. Not important. But I do need to know, is this person a well-balanced, healthy, functional individual versus is this somebody who could be a physical threat to me, or an emotional threat to me, or a financial threat to me or somebody I care about? That's important. That's the distinction. So I hope that this has helped you to identify some of these pathological people, these pathological behaviors. And I hope that I have in some way impressed upon you the importance of knowing where this person stands on the NPD spectrum, on the cluster B spectrum. I hope to follow this episode up shortly with an episode on how to spot a sociopath. And listen in, because I plan at least once a week to be doing some cool new episodes. I plan to be doing some fun ASMR style bedtime story episodes. And if that's something that strikes your fancy, listen in, keep an ear open, check out my Spreaker page, follow me on Spreaker, follow Dominique Does Life on Facebook, follow Dominique Does Life on YouTube, and welcome to my world with Dom. And you will see when these episodes come out. So thank you for listening in. I know this is a longer one, but it's so incredibly important. And for those of you who don't yet know, I offer help, consulting, counseling, and coaching for people who have been through narcissistic abuse or who suspect they may be going through narcissistic abuse. Same goes for sociopathic abuse. Same goes for all cluster B abuse. This is what I do for a living. If you can only afford, for instance, a package of weekly text message counseling, hey, it's totally affordable. We'll do that. If you want face-to-face consulting and counseling, great, awesome, we can do that. If you want phone and text, we can totally do that. We can do week to week, month to month, however it works best for you. If you want a combination where I'm available to you 24/7 by text, by email, by phone, in person, we can totally do that. We can make that work. And what I've started doing recently with my business is restructuring a bit. I've restructured how I do my payment plans. Now, I used to charge, between $70 and $120 a session. Look, people like the idea of one session. One session, Then I get to decide if I want to come back. Well, these people do come back, and they come back often, and the costs add up. So what I've started doing is, like I just explained, doing week to week and month to month packages, where you are saying, you're booking me, you're setting aside my time for you for either 6 days out of the week or 3 weeks out of the month, right? And that way you're saving money. You're not paying every time you talk to me. It saves money for you, and it helps me to more easily book out my time and not have to worry about constantly checking to see who wants this hour with me and who wants that hour with me. It's easier for both of us. It'll save you quite a lot of money, and it'll hopefully save you some stress too over planning and, oh my gosh, will she be able to fit me in? Because things are getting a little close right now where I'm not able to fit everybody in who wants to see me. So if that's something that strikes your fancy or interests you, I highly suggest going to my business Facebook page, because our website's under construction with my awesome website designer who I love very much. And go to my Facebook page for now, Trinity SS Wellness, and go to the services tab, not the shop tab, the services tab. And then go ahead, peruse, perhaps consult with me, shoot me a text, shoot me an email, ask me whatever questions you have about my services, or just say, hey, you know what? I know that I want the level 2 text counseling package. I'm dealing with a narcissist right now at work, or I think I may be dating a narcissist. Here's what works for me. I know I'll be available by text. Here, I want this level 2 text counseling package. Boom, you've got it that whole entire week or month, depending on how you want to do it, booked out for you. You've got that time available. You know that you're going to be able to connect with me every day, should you need to, via text or phone, right? So do this now. Book your appointments now. Book your month and week-long packages with me, because I don't want you to need me and not have me. Oftentimes, clients will call me or text me with an emergency, and if I am all booked up, I do my best to fit you in as soon as possible. But wouldn't you rather be paying less money and have me in your back pocket anytime you need me, right? No brainer. So for those of you who have been asking about our new way of doing things, it's not that new. It's like 6 months old, but that's how we do right now. It's worked out really well for me and for my clients so far. And I'm here for you. I'm going to try to include that link right here in the description box. You guys, I'm here if you need me. And if you don't feel like I'm the right fit for you, I will still recommend a number of other professionals to you. I get nothing for that. I'm not paid for doing that. I don't get anything from it. I just want to help you find the right person for you. So if you're looking for help and you're just thinking, oh, you know what, she's not my speed, I want someone else. Perhaps I want to work with a man. I'm more comfortable with a man than a woman. Perhaps I'm more comfortable with somebody older, what have you. Ask me. I will help you find the right person. I do have connections in this community, and I'm happy to use them to benefit you. Okay, so folks, thank you for listening, and that'll do it. We're finally wrapping up, and we'll talk to you very, very soon. Be well, take care of yourself, and know that you have the tools when you need them.